All of time and space. Everywhere and anywhere, every star that ever was. Where do you want to start?
We survived the Himalayas and we've arrived at a base surrounded by frozen tundra beneath a fast-moving glacier. But we can't have the heating on because it's too expensive nowadays. And there are no lettuces at Tesco. I'm Ian.
And I'm Mark. And welcome to All of Time and Space. And let's waste no more time and get up to speed with where we are in the story. The Doctor, with Victoria and Jamie, lands at a top scientific base in England, where they have just unearthed an ancient ice warrior. Aliens from Mars. Preserved in the ice for centuries and now revitalised, the Ice Warriors feel ready to take over. Can the Doctor overcome these warlike Martians and halt the relentless approach of the ice glaciers? Well, we'll find out after this.
What's supposed to happen, Doctor?
You see, this fellow Arden has set the electricity so that the ice melts very slowly, allowing for the resistance.
It's working quite quickly.
Well, I expect there's some impurities in the ice. I say. Look at that. What is it? It's an electronic connection. Sure of it.
Can't be.
Now, you wait here and don't touch it. Going to him all of a sudden.
I don't know. Scientists are all alike. Eureka and all that.
I could do with a go in this, maybe. Victoria,
What?
do you see how those lassies were dressed?
Yes, I did. And trust you to think of something like that.
Well, couldn't help thinking about it.
Well, I think it's disgusting, wearing that kind of thing.
Oh, so it is. So it is. You don't see yourself dressed like that, then?
Jamie!
Oh, I'm sorry. It was just an idea.
We will now change the subject, please. I want to look at this map.
And welcome back. And it's time to welcome our dear friend, Dr. Matthew Barber, back into the TARDIS. Hello, Matt.
Dear friend to some, mortal enemy to others.
Hello, darling. I've missed you.
Oh, there's a lot of sexual tension in this TARDIS this time round.
Well, I tried to, limit it if I can.
Yeah. You just can't control it. Anyway, before we start off down that particular rabbit hole, Ian.
Hello. Yeah. Hi, cowboys. What you got? We're going to do the mind probe again, Matt. You've been through this several times. I'm not going to run through the spiel all over again. You're never going to go down in flames to this ragbag collection of piss-poor questions. But nevertheless, once again, it is time for you to face the mind probe.
No, not the mind probe.
No, not the mind probe.
Weak.
Very poor.
That was. We've had some belters lately, and that was
lamentable.
That was lamentable. Yes.
Yeah.
Matt,
Get on with it.
All right.
Sakes, this
Satisfy
waffling.
the mind probe.
This is what brings podcasts down. Is this waffling? This endless waffling.
Yeah.
No,
why can't you just cut to the point?
people just start turning off when they start hearing Ian speaking.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
I'm actually a bit hurt, and I don't know if I can.
Okay. Well, I win then. Again.
Right, you bitch. Satisfy the mind probe, and you'll be returned to your customary time and place. But if you fail in the quest, then Castan Cockram here is positively frothing to toss you into the time lash.
That,
Are you
that,
ready?
that evolves each time, doesn't it?
It does.
It gets more and more elaborate.
It does. And
Oh,
slightly closer to the explicit tag.
By the time Colin Baker comes along, God knows what Mark's going to be doing.
Oh, if
Wow.
he came on here, I certainly wouldn't want to toss him into the time lash, and I'm pretty sure Mark would.
I mean, the Colin Baker era is synonymous with the video nasty, isn't it?
It
So
is. At least if you were going to,
we've got that to look forward to.
If you were going to have to do that to Colin Baker, it would be the quickest of all the doctors.
Oh dear.
So, Matt, are you ready for question 1?
Yes.
You won't get it. I'll tell you now.
Okay.
Okay, question 1. Warriors of Genghis Khan was a song by Bad News. Name one member of this 1980s British rock band.
Well, you've hit on my specialist subject, which is 1980s British rock. Bad News. In the 1980s. I've no idea. Rick Wakeman?
Please, sir.
Mark.
Can I answer?
Mark.
Could I suggest Adrian Edmondson?
You could. You could also have Rick
okay.
Mail, Nigel Planer, or Peter
Yeah.
Richardson.
Yeah.
Oh dear, that's a big fat 0. Just going to write the
Yeah.
word failure down against that question. Question 2. Name 2 other classic era Doctor Who stories with the word warriors, plural, warriors, in the title.
Warriors of the Deep.
Yep.
So it's not Time Warrior. That's the red herring. So I'm not going to say the Time Warrior.
Oh.
So Warriors. Is it an episode from a Hartnell episode?
No.
Oh, Warriors. Warriors.
Oh, you're going to kick yourself, Matt.
Yes, I know. Hang on. No. There's no time limit. Oh, God.
I'm writing down again the word failure just next to where I've written the word gate.
Warriors Gate. Can we just point out that we did a rip-off of House of Games, a Who-themed rip-off of House of Games.
Yep.
And Ian got halfway through, I think, getting 0 points. No points.
Can we also point out that in the second episode we recorded, I beat you, so...
No, you didn't. The second episode, you were worse.
The second episode I won. First one I was bad. The second one I beat you. Third one I was a bit flustered and a bit, preoccupied.
Okay.
So I've written down the word failure on 2 occasions. And I'm moving on to question 3 now.
Yes.
This one's quite easy, to be fair. Even you, I imagine, with what intellectual powers you can muster, will be fine with this.
I can feel my microphone is about to develop a fault.
Well, you shouldn't shove it now. That's rude. According to the Third Doctor, Matt, what is the most perfect killing machine ever devised?
Oh. I mean, it should be a Dalek, shouldn't it?
Is it Matt Hancock?
You have to bear in mind that
I might have to
his
edit that
era
out.
happened before Hancock's
Half hour. Yeah.
thing.
Half hour in office.
Half hour, very good. Cool, blimey. Well, I can't believe I'm writing down fail yet again. The correct answer
Raston Warrior Robot.
is, unfortunately, that was too late because I've already written down. So that's 3 for 3. You've got wrong, or you've not answered in time. But yes, it was the Raston Warrior Robot.
Ian, I can't help but notice that the level of respect for the contestant is
So, see,
somewhat
he-
lacking
he
in this
started
episode
this.
compared to
He
the ones
started
around
this.
it.
I always assumed on this podcast that you got different guests each week to be really... I was really impressed with it because it diversifies it, broadens its reach. You get different voices. It's just because
But-
people don't come back, do they? They reach a certain point where Ian just bullies them off. No wonder this isn't Peg talking.
That was a great Bee Gees song. Right, question 4. This one is very easy, and you will get this. Question 4. What story sees the Doctor visit a frost fair?
Prospect. They're nice.
Well done. He's got
God.
1 point.
How many questions are there?
There's 2 more to go.
Okay.
You've got to get them both right. Sadly, you probably will, to be entirely honest. Question 5. What was the name of the shopping mall on the planet Svartos?
Ice World.
Well done. Give you another point there.
Oh, these are all ice themed. I don't know if you noticed. You've got them
Well, apart
Warriors
from the
and
first
Ice
three,
themed.
apart from,
Yeah,
they
Warriors
were
themed.
Warriors themed.
I'm better at Ice than Warriors.
You are. I've noticed that
It
there's
would
been
appear so, yeah.
a definite uptick. Bear that in mind as we move into the final question. If you get this right, you've drawn level, and then it's at our discretion whether or not you get tossed into the tinsel.
yeah.
So, you know.
Fair enough.
You ready, by the way, Mark? Have you got your special glove?
Yes, I've got the Wilhelm scream ready to go.
You got the salve. Okay. In what movie did Boba Fett portray an unemployed Maori?
In what movie did Boba Fett, so that would be Jeremy Bullock. Oh, no. Oh, I've seen it as well. Oh,
He's flustered.
He's flustered.
I'm going to say boy, but it's not. It's an earlier one. It's a really good film.
See, I think he may have forgotten the little nugget of information that Ian just let slip
Oh, hang
just
on.
now.
Ice, snow, Warriors. What is it?
I'm writing down failure.
Okay,
against
yeah.
This question.
Yeah.
The answer is the 1994 Lee Tamahori film Once Were Warriors.
Yes. Okay.
Ah.
I mean, I might have got a load wrong, but you're the one sat down with a pad of paper with failure written on it five times. And tomorrow you will get up and you will read that and you'll go, oh.
No,
Is that
I'll
me?
do what I do every morning after you've been defeated at a quiz. I will get up and I will do a special dance to our Lord and Master.
Is that a euphemism?
JR?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Jay. The horned beast. Now, anyone listening is going to be completely bewildered by all this. So
Yeah,
we should-
sorry. If this is your first time listening, we don't normally treat our guests with such disdain. It's just-
Normally, then
we have
they're
a special
nice to me,
relationship
so
with
I'm
Matt.
nice back to them, but Matt has decided that we are mortal enemies.
So are we going to toss him in or not?
Yeah, we are going to toss him in, but first we should probably
Yeah.
knuckle down and embrace the reason we are all assembled on this lovely afternoon/evening to talk about the Ice Warriors.
Oh, if we must. Matthew, would you have read the Target book on this one, or what's your relationship with this particular story?
I was thinking that I must have read the Target book. It feels like the Target book that everybody's read. So I knew the story, so I must have known the story, but I can't actually remember watching it all the way through before, but I must have done at some point. So I just don't know. I don't remember. I must have watched the orphaned episodes on Lost in Time and just felt like I'd seen the whole story.
Yeah. I think that would have been my first exposure to them.
Yeah, because the first episode exists, doesn't it? I've watched it. I watched it yesterday, so I should know this.
Yeah.
So actually, it's perfectly possible to watch like the 4 episodes and just fill in the blanks of 2 and 3 without missing too much story. It's just a really neat 4-parter with 2 animations shoved in.
Yes, I had the Target book. I think that was the first time I'd experienced it. And is it Chris Achilleos did the cover for that one? I'm pretty sure it was one of his. Such a memorable cover. What about you, Ian? Would that have been the same for you?
I didn't read the Target book. I didn't read a lot of the early Doctor's Target books, and I found a lot of them to be really kind of off-puttingly. I guess maybe I was just a little bit too young for some of them at the time. Like the David Whittakers were quite daunting when you're 5 or 6 or whatever. And Brian Hales, I think I'd picked up one of his books and just didn't get on with his prose style. And I looked at the first couple of pages of this one yesterday, and I just thought, yeah, this is awful. This is a terrible piece of writing.
And this is from the same writer who his last outing, of course, was the Celestial Toymaker, which we absolutely adored.
Yes. So so I didn't read the Target book, and but I have seen the story quite quite a long time ago, so this wasn't my first go round with it. I think I bought.
No.
There was like an Apple kind of series of the Doctor's greatest hits kind of things.
Oh, yeah.
Around the time of the 50th, and I got the Troughton box set, which I'm no longer allowed to watch according to Apple, which is interesting given that I bought it from them. So that's
How
illegal.
rude.
Yeah, but so I would have seen it about 10 years ago, and I saw it again yesterday. Imagine that. Oh.
It occurs to me that all of these season 5 stories, you pretty much don't have to watch them, because actually thinking about it, I didn't watch the Ice Warriors, I just watched bits, but they're all exactly the same. So
It is falling into a bit of a format, isn't it?
yeah.
For better or worse.
Well, there's a rich topic of debate. What do we think? Is it better or is it worse? From
I think
a
it very much
production-
depends on what you're choosing to fill in the rest of the story with.
Yeah, from a production standpoint, obviously it's great. You get 6 weeks out of one set and a bit of, fake snow. You're laughing.
You get more money to go on location as well.
Yeah, and so
Save money.
when they do that, like they did in the last story we were talking about, the location work looked really magnificent.
Oh, that was fantastic, wasn't it? Yeah.
It's a shame you weren't here for that one, Matt, but you got the Ice Warriors.
Yeah.
It does feel very studio bound, doesn't it, this one? So it's...
It seems odd to put Abominable Snowmen and Ice Warriors together, because they lampshade it, so even I don't know, Jamie points out, well, this looks exactly the same as Abominable Snowmen.
You just moved us up the hill.
Yeah.
Well, obviously they paid a lot of money for that fur coat for the last story, so they figured they'd get some more use out
Well,
of it.
that's what
That's
I
true,
think
but-
it is. I think they hired it for 12 weeks, so they said, "Hey, let's see what else we can do with snow." And this
My God, but you can see Troughton sweating in that coat in this one. That's HD for you. I watched this on BritBox or whatever it is now, and you can see the sweat slowly running down Patrick Troughton's face as he thinks about his two families and how he's going to juggle them in the evening. The panic is-
and when he dies and the estate gets divided and they all find out about each other, that's going to be. And is he going to be
dear.
dead enough to avoid that level of shit? We'd all be worried. Yeah, no, it did look like a particularly daft idea to have him in that coat in the studio. I'm sure they could have, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
And another, while we're on the subject of money saving with, using the same garments over and over again, quite a strange idea in some respects to have a Georgian house inside a futuristic dome.
That's a brilliant.
Or not,
That's a
or-
brilliant idea, isn't it? I mean, there are some things. I'll put my cards on the table. They're tarot cards. So there are some things about the Ice Warriors, rewatching it yesterday, that I really liked and I didn't expect to like. And the idea of a Georgian house in the middle of a dome being attacked by a glacier. Dr. Science has left the building with a fast-moving glacier. Just the point, they haven't worked out that glacial actually means slow, and suddenly they've got this glacier that's like speeding up on their back. But the Georgian house is really interesting, and I think they should have done more with it. Ice Warriors going around a dark Georgian house stalking people. That's a story.
That would actually have been a lot more interesting, yeah.
Well, yeah, so there are bits that I don't think are very good about the Ice Warriors.
Yeah. They did spend, I think, quite a lot of money on the computer prop.
Did they?
Probably most of it was the wages of the person who had to be inside it, rotating it around when it had to move.
Surely it was just an old Moulinex food processor with a dial at the top.
I thought it was pretty cool.
It sounds like a challenge for this podcast that you can do on a semi-regular basis is spot the bits of the Ice Warriors computer prop that they reuse in future episodes. 'Cause presumably it keeps coming back until Meglos or something
They would have to
ridiculous like that.
Yes.
amortise it by dropping it in. I'm sure at some point it becomes part of a console for a season, somewhere in the...
You just reminded me, actually, they were trying to reuse some of the old props from previous stories for Clint's office, and they wanted to use the Celestial Toymaker's desk, but sadly it had been trashed and was no longer
Sadly,
available.
it was so boring
Yeah.
that they couldn't move
Yeah.
it into position. So
The budget probably wasn't also helped by the fact that they completely struck all the sets, even though they still had to use them again, so they had to effectively rebuild the sets again from scratch.
I mean, it's
Which you
kind of-
could argue was possibly a bit of a mistake.
It's teething troubles, isn't it? They're slowly working out how to do this program cost effectively, but
Yeah.
it's a slow process, and it takes a number of years. Some would say decades. So we start off with the TARDIS landing on its side, and then this kind of hilarious kind of carry-on Time Lord kind of, it sounds like they're all having sexual intercourse with each other for 20 seconds of grunting before they appear all kind of spent out of the top of the police box. Do you think that was like a sort of deliberate welcome for our guest star of the show, Bernard Bresslaw?
I think by this point they all seem to have gelled as a team, don't they, those three? And it seems as though poor Deborah Watling is generally the butt of all the jokes.
I mean, she was awful in this. Really bad.
Matt, don't mince your words. Just say what you really think.
Well, she's good when the three of them are together. So things like Tomb of the Cybermen, I think, works really well because of their the three actors bouncing off each other.
I thought she was really good in Abominable Snowmen. I thought she was excellent in that.
I can't remember. She wasn't very good in this, though. I mean, it's not her fault. She was just stuck in the polystyrene cave. And the first 2 episodes, I think, where she falls apart and just screams, and then she has to run away and she drops things. And I found her very irritating.
I think her performance is very consistently on, one note. And it totally depends as to whether or not she's the most annoying note, or if there are worse people in any given story as to whether or not she is the most irritating thing in it. Sometimes she gets lucky.
So you're not about to suggest that Angus Lenny is annoying?
What, Shuey McPhee?
Yeah.
If I did, how would that go down?
He's one of the more interesting things. At least, I mean, he doesn't look like he belongs there. He looks like he's dropped in from another story completely.
He looks like the It's Man from Monty Python, who's just run in and forgotten to say
There are some
It's.
unusual costuming choices in this story, aren't there? You've got, obviously, as you mentioned, he's kind of verging on caveman, isn't he? And then you've got these kind of psychedelic Trumpton firemen wandering around excavating aliens out of the ice. That's a bit strange.
Whose job it is to walk around nearby bits of ice looking for anyone who's been frozen in the ice for thousands of years. Seems like a kind of niche job. I can't imagine that adds up to 40 hours a week, but whatever. Jobs for the boys.
I mean, I'm on board. I'm on board with that. As much as I dislike disagreeing with Ian, I think if a glacier. So the whole point about glaciers, normally they're retreating and they gradually kick out stuff. Mammoths and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just talking myself out of this. They're not normally advancing
but
at a high rate.
Keep going, Matt.
At a high rate. So I guess, but then they do kick out stuff when they advance, don't they? It goes out the top or something.
It goes out the top.
I think so. I think that's science.
It's like being on one of those science documentaries from the 80s, isn't it?
I like the scientists' costumes. The weird black and swirly ones.
Yeah, they were pretty cool.
Were they made specially for the Ice Warriors?
Particularly Miss Garrett. I thought that was very fetching.
But they must have been custom made. They were,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty impressive.
So in the production featurette, they said the design was supposed to represent the idea that by 3,000 year, well, by the year 3000, clothes could be sprayed onto you by a machine.
Wow.
And so the questions that arise from that are A, why would you do that? And B, if that were the scenario, and you could program the machine to go, well, I'll have some denim jeans and a nice T-shirt. Why would you go, actually, I'll have a printout of a computer circuit board in black and white? It seems like
because
an odd,
computers are futury and sciencey.
and science and space clothes. Yeah.
Much as I like disagreeing with Ian, as everybody knows, wasn't that this year's fashion or last year's fashion? There was a fashion model who did get her clothes sprayed on her. Literally, they revolved around her, spraying a dress on her.
Much like the FBI, Matt, I'm very interested to see your internet search history.
I happened to come across this video.
Oh, bad choice of words there. Matt.
It was quite chaste. It didn't show anything, and it wasn't.
Was there
body
spraying?
paint.
Did you spray?
It wasn't body paint though.
Right.
It was actually like it's hardened as it sort of touched.
So
her.
did it harden before you sprayed?
No. It hardened on contact.
Right.
So
really?
in motion it was liquid. Otherwise, it wouldn't spray.
Yeah.
Then it contacted the lady's outerwear. I believe she was wearing underwear.
She was wearing some sort of skimpy lace.
And then it hardened, but it dribbled slightly.
It got hard and then it dribbled after the
No, it dribbled
spurting.
slightly as it hardened. So it ended up being this kind of weird sort of flowing.
So,
gunk.
Mark, in the metadata, there's a little button called explicit, and if you move that to
don't worry,
the green,
that's the default.
Good, because I fear there might have been a euphemism at work that I personally wasn't aware of, but
I didn't notice anything.
No.
No.
Didn't come from me. I
think you just said it did, and it shot across the room onto your laptop or something.
I'm describing what I saw on this video. Look it up.
Anyway,
look it up, children.
let's
I'm
please
not going to
move
do
on.
that because this is my personal MacBook.
So, Peter Barkworth plays the next in a very long line of recalcitrant
Now,
bosses.
I'm going to
that
stop
won't
you.
listen to the Doctor.
I'm going to stop you there because I know that is widely, that's reported wisdom that everyone claims.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was. I think that was John Coleshaw.
Oh,
I think that was John Coleshaw pretending to be Peter Barkworth
okay.
because the performance and the hair. I mean, obviously Barkworth was wearing a wig, but it was just uncannily Coleshaw-esque, I thought.
Oh.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I saw Ian Levine play one of the scientists as well.
I mean, they have subverted it a bit because this time round, he's really impressed with the Doctor and he wants to keep him there as his new kind of scientific advisory guy. Whereas normally it's they just completely ignore him and carry on without taking his advice.
But he's a weird guy. I mean, and he sort of fluctuates through the story because they're so obsessed with the computer, and it doesn't seem that way in the first few episodes. It just increases and increases. And by the end, they're kind of, it's like a sort of Meglos situation where they're treating the computer like a god.
Yeah,
but they don't understand.
I think it's because they installed ChatGPT into it and it gained sentience, and it just went on from there.
I mean, season 5 pretty much could have been written by ChatGPT.
So,
Write a season 5 Doctor Who story, ChatGPT. The Doctor materializes outside a scientific base.
I think you might have stumbled onto something there, Matt.
I think that's very good. Thinking about it, you're right to point out that the default is that the base commander is a sort of intransigent, angry man who opposes the Doctor and wants him removed and or shot. But I think you've got to go back to the 10th planet for the kind of best example of that kind of antagonist. And in season 5, I can't remember the Tomb of the Cybermen now, but have we really had one of those kind of oppositional base leaders yet, or are they kind of packed into the second half of season 5?
Well, Fury springs to mind instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what's in season 5. So the moon base has one of them, doesn't it?
I'd say he's a bit more cooperative.
Okay. Is it the moon base
Yorkshire
that has
chap,
Pierre who carries a baguette and wears
It was what was his name? It's not Pierre.
Jean-Claude?
Something similarly European. And he wears that awful neckerchief. I really took against him.
I got that impression. Yeah.
So, has Ian enjoyed any Doctor Who yet? That he's been watching for this podcast.
I very much like the Underwater Menace.
Yeah, he loved it.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
heaven's sakes.
10 out of 10 for Ian. Yeah.
So yeah, Clint, whoever portrayed him, I'm going to stick to my cultural theory, is this kind of scientific genius who's been tasked with kind of saving humanity by operating a computer and doing something with an ionizer to save the environment, because presumably humanity has ruined the environment, so it's all very, no shit Sherlock kind of thing.
Hang on. So Dr. Science.
Yeah.
So hang on, let me get this right. Deforestation
Yeah.
has decreased carbon dioxide.
No.
Because plants release carbon
Yes.
dioxide, according to... Isn't that the complete opposite of what actually happens?
So I had to look it up because I wanted to make that joke. But it says that plants, as part of photosynthesis, do emit low levels of carbon dioxide. So what this show is positing is that humans don't make carbon dioxide, so it only comes from plants. So by getting rid of plants, we've screwed the environment, which is obviously nonsense.
They just have to get more farting cows into the fields, just to buck them up a little bit.
Just to what?
So Brian Hale's prediction of the future was completely the polar opposite of what actually happened. Is what we're saying.
Basically, yes. Yeah. And so we've got leader Clent, and he's in there as this guy. I'm a bit weird. I'm a bit machiney. I'm very very cold and impersonal, and I bark orders at people. And by the end of it, yeah, he's a lovely little lammykins by episode 6. But it's interesting to see the way that other characters relate to him. I mean, obviously Penley, played by Wallace and Gromit, was fired or left the base some months previously, and when he's sort of being particularly scathing about Clent, he says, I'm looking at all the quotes I've got written down here. It
just says failure.
No plants, no carbon dioxide. He's just a very glib political animal, says Penley.
Oh.
Now, I don't know about you, but I would not describe Clent as a particularly glib anything. He's one of the worst speakers and human beings I've ever seen, and I'm not sure he could politically operate his way out of a Georgian house in a dome.
So this struck me about what struck me about the Ice Warriors is it's really fantastic. It's really well structured. It's a really fantastic idea. There are opportunities for conflict within this Georgian house in the dome. That's great. Victoria gets kidnapped by the Ice Warriors. That's great. The Ice Warriors idea of the Ice Warriors, that's creepy. That's great.
Yeah.
Jamie gets his little plot. That's great. The idea of Penley is great. But each of these scenarios is played so dully. There's no real any kind of conflict seems to get diffused or get sort of ignored, and the dialogue kind of doesn't really sparkle.
Now, without wishing to spoil our feedback section, I think you could possibly, I'm just going to throw this out here, suggest that the length of the story is a bit overly long. And it could have really benefited from being a shorter 4-parter rather than trying to really stretch it out to 6.
But I don't think I agree with that, because I think...
Really?
Yeah, I think Brian Hales actually sets up enough subplots and diversions...
Enough tensions.
And different locations and enough tensions to get you through, for once, get you through 6 episodes, but then doesn't really know what to do with the subplots and diversions and tensions. It just doesn't... It just turns into kind of, we can't do that because computer says no. Basically.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
although, I don't know about you, I really couldn't understand a word that computer was saying, so it could have been saying anything. I wouldn't have known.
I think it was saying, "Oh, bango."
Was it
Roy
Skelton
Skelton
I thought it was.
It was Skelton
I thought
again,
it was.
yeah.
I was a bit distracted because there's a little bit, I think, in the first scene where Clent starts channeling Michael Gove, of all people.
Oh, dear.
When he says, I've had enough of experts. So in some ways, Brian Hales is a visionary who predicts
He really is.
who predicts
He
a
really
time
is.
when humanity will be led by the sort of people who eschew sensible scientific expert advice.
What do we think about the Doctor being suspicious of computers? Because this has happened before. I can't remember when, or it will happen. Is it just he's scarred after the
I think
war
it's
machines?
I think it's in the original outline for the character, isn't it? When they had their
Was
all
it?
the
Yeah.
people get together to come up with the idea for it. I think one of the things was that he was suspicious of technology and wants to. I think they go a bit far with it. They say he wants to destroy it. But yeah, that is kind of baked in
Oh, yeah.
Now-
okay.
to their original idea.
It is nonsense, isn't it? Because he's clearly from a very technologically advanced race and he travels in something which I imagine is operated by some sort of computer. So I just thought it was a really weird tick for this kind of pro-science, especially by the time he becomes John Pertwee. He's always up to his elbows in some device or other. And it just those moments where he's called upon to be a bit of a Luddite or be a bit old-fashioned or I prefer a paper book to a computer, it really doesn't work for me.
I can see it working when he's kind of disgruntled at his theories being checked. When they don't just do what he says, that's kind of got that kind of pomposity which works quite well. But it does seem to go to extremes. He seems to be framed as being actively suspicious of computers or not liking computers. And that's odd.
So Matt, you were suggesting that Brian Hales sets up all these really interesting potentials for a great story. So do you feel it's partially down to the director? I mean, Derek Martinus is not a bad director by any means, but would somebody else possibly have been able to
I'm not sure
make something more of it?
I'm not sure it's the direction. I think it is the script. I think he's so the plan he's come up with is a solid one, and he's got enough in that plan to get a really good Doctor Who story out of it. But I think when he's come down to writing the actual scenes, I just don't think he's kind of, they're not driving the story like they should be. They're not kind of keeping interest. They're not giving the opportunities for atmosphere or tension. So I think the direction's fine. I think it looks fine. There's only one moment where it's obviously polystyrene in the ice caves. But apart from that,
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay. I did watch this, and then I went and watched Cold War. Is it Cold War?
Oh yeah.
The modern one. So I
Yeah.
watched that. It's a different
Really
series,
must have had a
isn't it?
really bad day yesterday. And I worry about you now, because I feel like psychologically you must just be a bit... Shall I do some more questions? But I'll do some easier ones. All right, what do we think of the arrival and first story for Doctor Who's all-time third best monster?
I think it's a really iconic design. I'm not sure they work particularly well. They're somewhat limited. I feel sorry for the poor sods who are inside the costumes, because that is one big old chunky main body part, isn't
It's
it?
a chunky monkey.
Well, that sounds wrong, doesn't it?
I bet they were.
Chunky main body part. Oh dear.
I bet they were dreaming of having spray-on costumes.
I bet Patrick Troughton was in that coat thinking, well, it could be worse because I could
Yeah,
be Bernard in
that's
that,
so true,
in
yeah.
that
Yeah.
big green fridge he's wearing. Yeah.
So it was like a fiberglass torso, wasn't it? And then you've got these massive, great hips sticking out the side
And
of
sort
it.
of fur around all the joints
Yeah.
and things. I mean, that
Yeah.
must have
And
been
and rubber.
and rubber.
Yes.
And they're covered in rubber.
Jeebus.
I think they're good. I think Bernard Breslau's costume was probably the best. I think after they did his, they sort of tried to like not show the others too carefully. I think it's only like 2 years or 3 years before they've worked out that they can put rubber masks on faces in different sections,
Yeah.
so that you can actually talk and move your lips. I think that's a bit strange, but it's eerie when he's talking and he's kind of trying to jerk
Yeah.
his head as much as possible to make the thing move.
And they also had to pre-record the dialogue as well.
So was it Bernard Breslau actually giving his dialogue?
Yeah, so it's him speaking, but they had to record it. I assume there was some issue with, I don't know, the noise from the costume or whatever, so they had to record that separately and then...
There were
Dub
issues
it
with
over
having
the
a
top.
massive rubber mask over his face, which
Yeah,
he
well,
couldn't
yeah, that
really
wouldn't
talk
help.
through.
Yeah, no.
But I think it's difficult. It's easy to forget how impressive the costumes are because we've just seen so much of them and we've grown up with photographs. But I think they are, they're big and imposing and bulky and alien looking. And you have to have something like that because the whole point of that first episode is you see this sort of silhouette in the ice. And it wouldn't work if it's, if it's a weedy guy. So, yeah, they're good.
But so the kind of received wisdom is that Brian Hale's original vision was that they were sort of looking very much more like armour and less like part of an insectoid lizardy creature. They were going to have more visible, obvious kind of electronic stuff. So it'd be like a sort of cybernetic kind of bodysuit with an armory thing. Would that have been better, do we think? Because I can't imagine a story where a creature like that in that shape could have been much of a menace. They're just very lumbery. Very much like the Yeti, if you cast your minds back to the previous story. You've got a very large, wide-hipped, slow-moving creature that it's very easy to run away from.
I think in both cases they look really impressive in stills, and then that effect is lessened the more you see them lumbering about.
So really, telesnaps are the best way to enjoy these stories. That's what you're saying.
I think there's still some sense of armour about them, some kind of... Because you look at them and it helped that I was watching Cold War.
Yeah.
When watching Cold War, where it actually is framed as armour and you see an opening and you see what's inside it, which I kind of quite liked. But
the ones in this story are really imposing because they're all like super tall, aren't they? And they had a specific point of casting really tall actors.
And the rubber mask with the helmet, so you can see that it's a helmet, but it sort of looks like it's their body, but then it's not their body. I think they get that kind of slight sense of you don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's all kind of ambiguous. You don't know which parts of it are the creature and which are armor, and that is a good aspect of it. But it would have been more interesting maybe to see something that was slightly more cyberpunky. But
it did restrict what they could do on the set as well. So there were certain bits of the story where they have to. I think the bit where he has to carry Victoria, they had to kind of cheat that by filming in such a way that it looks like she's being carried, but they're not actually doing it because they literally can't bend. And during breaks, they had to have like shooting sticks so they could just perch themselves on that to take the weight off.
And hope they don't slip.
Yeah, quite.
Then they'd be going down to the
Apparently
hospital.
there were serious chafing issues as well in areas that you don't want to be chafed. No, quite.
The north, I imagine.
Well, yes, yeah. And the south.
Ooh. And the Bakerloo line in particular. So, this might not be the right time to do this, but I'd like to share with you just a couple of notes I made while I was watching the story, because I want it sort of charts my journey with the story, and it might strike a chord with you guys. I don't know. So what I wrote down during episode 3, I found myself writing, despite Troughton's intensity and unquestionable brilliance, by the start of part 3 I found myself wishing for the Pertwee era.
Oh God.
By part 4, I've decided I'd definitely rather be watching The Demons, specifically. If only there was a book on that we could read.
I'm saying nothing.
Well, there's a first. And finally, at the start of part 5, I wrote down, I'm pretty sure I could handle a Colin Baker instead of this.
Wow.
And then I thought, actually, no, it's nothing like that bad. But as you can see, I struggled with this one, and
Ran through the gamut of emotions.
I did,
there,
and as Matt said so well, there's enough in the script and in the story. The story engine is wound sufficiently tightly to fill 6 episodes. There are a couple of off-putting performances, but generally there always are. So I really couldn't identify quite why I found this one such hard work. What do you guys think?
I think it's Troughton, and I think Troughton's brilliant in everything, but he's at his best when he's bouncing off someone, or he's surrounded by he's got like Fraser Hines, so they can have a joke and a like improvisation. And in this, they kind of put Troughton all the time in a position where he basically had to do a one-man comedy routine.
Yeah.
And that was the only thing that kind of kept me engaged. And actually I was engaged with it. I quite enjoyed it. I think I preferred it to when I tried to watch Abominable Snowmen. I think Abominable Snowmen is a better looking story and more interesting and more atmospheric. But I think at least this changed scenes and hopped around a bit.
I think in most of his stories he tends to face off against the big bad, and I never really felt like they were always at a remove, weren't they? Because they were doing a lot of the stuff over video transmissions and things like that. So he's not actually there face to face with the adversaries for a lot of the story.
It's also another Brian Hales failure, I think, in that the Ice Warriors are set up as quite interesting monsters. They've got sort of motivations and they show mercy at times. And there's this question of, well, maybe they could be helped to take off. And the Doctor ends up just pointing a big gun at them, and then it destroys their ship. It just kind of kills them. He does it twice.
Yeah.
He just and there's that kind of sort of complexity just gets completely washed over. And I think you need that kind of complexity with Troughton, because he's capable of it. Pertwee's capable of it, but he just gets grumpy at the end of Silurians when sort of a similar thing happens. Whereas, I don't know, Troughton needs something something more complex to play off. And there was space there, there was room there. It was all, Hales had set up everything to tell this complex story. And each opportunity he kind of compromised, or he sacrificed it, or characters became automatons, or they went over the top with their reverence of the computer, or I mean, Penley was an interesting character. Penley is an interesting character. He's a rebel and an outcast, but all we hear is other characters saying, oh, Penley's such a rebel and an outcast, and then Peter Sallis just wanders around just doing stuff, and then eventually just comes back onto the base and helps people fix it. There's no real, they don't really do anything.
I like the scenes with him and Angus Lenny. I think those two play off each other quite well.
Yeah, the bit where they go down the glacier in a bathtub. That's really good.
So I'm quite thick, so it did take me a few seconds to get that, but that was a fine joke.
My slight unfortunate problem with Peter Sallis, who I understand might not be the most pleasant man as an actor.
Oh, really?
I've heard that somewhere. I don't know how true it
might
is.
need to hear. Do you have any anecdotal evidence to support that, or?
No, it's completely libelous, but he's dead, so that's all right.
Well, it's not libel, so it's
Chop, out it comes. My problem. It's not his fault, but obviously I grew up watching Last of the Summer Wine, and then I watched Wallace and Gromit. That's what I watched. I basically watched what Peter Sallis did in order to pay for his retirement and his later life. And I think he's really good. I think as an actor, he had the potential to be a doctor. He had that, him and Troughton bouncing off one another, usually, as actors, would be really interesting. And I was enjoying watching them, but they didn't have much to bounce off.
Yeah, Sallis was clearly a very, very, good actor, and he had slightly more to do in the story, he might have come out of it slightly better. I mean, he came out of it perfectly well. He was one of the more tolerable performances in the thing. But yeah, I'm just kind of, to be honest, I'm struggling with what you said about you grew up watching Last of the Summer Wine, because to me, Last of the Summer Wine, the opening music of that meant your weekend is over, you are going to school,
back
get
to
your
school.
bags back.
Oh yeah. I wasn't a
some
fan. I didn't
clean
like
socks.
it.
And
But I grew up and it was on all the time.
Well, and it seemed to me that it was a programme where there'd be three random northern men of fairly low pecuniary income, and one of them would go down a hill in a bathtub, as you say. And
one of them's usually a bit
wouldn't-
posh.
Wouldn't shag a woman from the shop in the village or something.
I mean, I hate to say it, and it's it makes me despise Yorkshire. It literally does, and I understand that Yorkshire is a beautiful county full of wonderful people.
Oh my
Sure.
God.
And I used to go on there. I used to go there on holiday quite regularly.
Matt, have you not seen Happy Valley? You don't mess with Yorkshire folk.
I've seen Happy Valley, and Happy Valley doesn't
Yeah.
make me like Yorkshire.
No, but you don't mess with them either.
Have you seen David Peace's Red Riding? I don't know if that makes you
Yeah.
like Yorkshire.
Oh
or...
God, yeah,
No.
that's
What,
yeah.
Once again.
what pro-Yorkshire texts are there available in the cultural...
I don't know. I watched, but it was Last of the Summer Wine and The All Creatures Great and Small. Those were the two things, and they're always
and
on.
Bergerac.
And Bergerac.
Sodding Bergerac.
That's on Jersey.
That's in Jersey.
No, I know. I've moved away from Yorkshire. I'm back on the Sunday night thing. Sorry, I've
No,
jumped.
stop.
right, okay.
No, we should talk about Yorkshire so we can get hate mail. I watched, so it's Last of the Summer Wine and All Creatures Great and Small, both on a Sunday, both sort of telling me that I'm going back to school the next day. And I found it, everybody seemed to find it charming and they wanted to move to Yorkshire after it. But as you say, that it had this undercurrent of kind of depression and
That and Antiques Roadshow.
poverty
Oh,
and misery.
first few bars of that theme tune. Oh God, it was
Sunday
good.
night
so
was
I
always such a televisual graveyard.
I despise Hugh Scully in the same way. And I was...
I do like his daughter from the X-Files, though.
Oh yes, she was
So-
lovely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's this sort of podcast content.
Absolute gold, isn't it? Yeah.
But it strikes me that Brian Hales, it's the same problem as the Celestial Toymaker. The Celestial Toymaker has so much opportunity for drama and tension and really
It's a
creepy
brilliant
bits.
central concept.
And it
yeah.
just ends up being really dull. Just kind of, they just say, well, here's the concept. But they don't do anything with it. It's just, so here it is, let's put it on the screen. That will be enough. And it's just not enough. It's not good enough, Brian Hales.
You know what they needed for this? They needed a Terrence Dicks.
They might have needed an injection of dicks.
I would have thought
Yeah.
a bit of Hulk would have helped.
Hulk
Well,
and
I think-
dicks.
I think if Dix had got his hands on this, he would have fashioned it into something a bit more exciting, because during his era, he would commission scripts. And I'm thinking particularly of the Bristol Boys. He would get these wacky, far-out concepts that you wouldn't necessarily want to commit to video, but he would make them work because he had enough belief in it that he would be able to take the constituent parts and turn them into something that would work on screen.
But also, yeah, look at the war games. This was before the Bristol Boys. But look at the War Games. That's 10 episodes? 10 episodes.
Yeah.
10 episodes of the same concept. Mm-hmm. And every episode has a different dynamic, a different tension. It goes in a different direction. It ends in a different point from which it begins. Mm-hmm. It does something interesting. And that's 10 episodes with one concept. Brian Hales has 6 episodes with about 4 different ideas, different settings, different opportunities. It's the anti-Dick. He's the anti-Dicks.
It's as if they've both been given a sort of wet face flannel, and Terrance Dicks has really wrung the hell out of it and got a large amount of soapy water, whereas Brian Hales just sort of pinched it very gently and got a little trickle down his shirt, and that is the difference.
It's as if they've both got a face flannel, but Terrance Dicks knows where the tap is.
So we've talked about the Ice Warriors. We've talked about the story, such as it is. We should probably we should delve more into. So I don't think Victoria was as irritating in this story as was our friend Mr. Lenny. I was very glad when his character was summarily dispatched in, I want to say, part 4. What did everyone else think? Who were the kind of standout good and bad, or less good, should we say, performances?
I think Barkworth was really good. Peter Sallis was great. I thought Wendy Gifford was really good. I thought the representation was, for its time, was decent.
Yeah.
We had plenty of, although a lot of them weren't speaking parts in the computer room.
A lot of the
least
women.
It gave the impression that...
What I don't understand is this story was set in the year 3000, but there were, I think, 3 women in that computer room who all had a 1960s England haircut, and I don't understand why that would have been.
Can I shock you?
Go on, please do.
I didn't like Peter Barkworth that much. I thought he was a bit twitchy as a performer, a bit kind of, and I don't think it's his fault. I think it's the fact that he starts in one place without knowing what he's going to be like in episode 6.
Yeah.
And he gradually kind of meanders around, not really. I think it's watching him with... It's just watching Troughton's so good.
Yeah.
He's such a natural performer for television. And other actors just kind of can't quite match him. Angus Lenny, I think, does. I think Angus Lenny is a natural for television. He's great.
I think you need to give Bernard Bresslaw a lot of credit as well, because he really sets the template for the performance.
He's great, but
the next stories.
But wasted. You could have Bernard Bresslaw actually in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
you could see him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean, he's basically in there for... I mean, he does well, and, you know, he suffers for his art, but he's in there for his height, which seems...
A bit wasteful, yeah.
Well, he was in there for his height and the Polaroid of Barbara Windsor in a bikini that he had in his wallet that him and Sid had crawled through a muddy field to get to.
Yeah, hence the chafing and the Bakerloo line. But yes, Wendy Gifford was good. There was a bit of a sort of a moon base. They're there to make a cup of tea, kind of secretary thing going on. This kind of
she was just changing all the settings and all the controls in the computer room.
She also didn't she go independently to Penley to try and persuade him to come back. Mm-hmm. That was one of the moments where I thought actually this is being written in an interesting way. This kind of tension between Penley and the main team, and now there's a bridge between them, so that we can start to see this. And then she turns into this computer loving.
Yeah, that's a bit of a shame.
We can't disconnect the computer. We can't do this to the computer. It's just a bit weird. Maybe sort of 5 or 6. What's the animation? Maybe in the animation it was more interesting.
Well, I suppose we'll never know, will we?
Well, Philip Morris, come on.
There's still time.
Yeah.
The wind might be blowing in the right direction.
I mean, the glaciers are retreating. Maybe that's where these film cans are kept.
Could be.
Hey, maybe they'll just be spat out the top.
I'm pretty sure that's science. I'm pretty sure that advancing glaciers spit things out as well as retreating ones.
Can we not make that the last sentence of the review, please? Do we have any final thoughts before we wrap it up and give it a score?
That bit where they rescue Jamie and they try and revive him.
Oh, that giant
with
bear as well. We haven't mentioned the bear yet.
They try and revive him by wiping his head with a sort of frozen chicken pie in silver foil. The Apple Watches that people wear that are like having like a very large, I would say, metal box soldered onto your wrist. Like they thought technology was going to go backwards.
I quite like the bit where Peter Sallis is dragging Jamie along. Jamie's wearing sunglasses, and Peter Sallis drags him along, and he gets caught up. And Peter Sallis goes, "Nope, that's enough."
Yeah, that was bizarre. And that sort of scene at the end where they sort of bring Jamie back into the control room, but they're at great pains to point out that Jamie still can't use his legs because last night he was out on the pop with Patrick Troughton.
Normally, they injure a companion and put him in the sick bay so that they can have a week off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what they did this time? Because he seemed to be in most of the episodes.
I feel like he was in them, but to a very low level. Like he'd have one scene in most episodes, so maybe he had 2 or 3 off, but they just strategically dropped him in.
I mean, obviously, we have the benefit of hindsight in knowing where Jamie's story ends.
Oh, here we go.
That
Captain
was quite
Hindsight.
an effective. But it was quite an effective, I felt, moment where you're left thinking, "Oh God, has he been killed?"
That's true. He wasn't.
He was.
Spoiler alert.
No.
Don't worry, viewers. That companion in peril thing, that was just to get you scared, but actually they were fine. That'll happen again.
We must mention the bear. I mean, that was
so they went to a lot of
quite
trouble
frightening,
to,
wasn't
to
it?
film
They did, didn't
actual
they?
footage of a bear for that sequence. And I remember
They had one brought in specially.
I remember it being a lot better than it struck me on this particular viewing. I think
he was unbelievably cute, wasn't
I
he?
probably looked away to write one of my silly notes about, oh God, I'd rather be watching Trial of a Time Lord than this when the actual attack happened.
Yeah.
But where it was
I feel the only
advancing,
way he could have been
it was
improved was if they'd given him a duffel coat and a suitcase with some marmalade sandwiches in. I think.
Well,
that would have really
I'd
finished
have watched the hell out of that. That would have
Yeah,
been lovely.
absolutely. Yeah.
If it was America, it'd be the same bear actor that played Gentle Ben, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wasn't he in everything?
God, Gentle Ben was depressing. That was the weekday equivalent of Last of the Summer Wine when Gentle Ben comes on. You're like, oh God, have we got to watch Dennis Weaver acting poorly
That
for
whiny little kid.
30
Jesus.
minutes before I can watch Neighbours? I'm worried about Des. I don't want to be watching this crap.
I mean, Gentle Ben and Dukes of Hazzard make me hate the southern states of America.
I mean, so I watched the Dukes of...
Daisy Duke. And,
Yeah, I was specifically going to go hot guys.
Okay.
I'm not Keeley. As a kind of 5-year-old, I wasn't that aware of the kind of politics of the South and the iconography of the Confederate flag, etc.
no.
Just driving around,
neither was I.
being chased by that wheezing fatty of a policeman who'd always end up going into a mangrove swamp. Fine. But Gentle Ben I found agonisingly terrible to have to watch. We should do a separate... Sorry, this is a complete thing. But the problem with podcast is everyone does a podcast about their favourite TV show. And is there one where people just slag off really shit TV shows from their youth? We should...
I mean, it's tempting.
Well, maybe that's an idea for the Christmas special.
But we'd have to rewatch them then.
Do we, though? Isn't it more funny to be, wildly specious and make generalisations that aren't borne out? And then
On a similar note, I thought I'd try a little social experiment with our 9-year-old son today. I was trying to explain to him how on Saturday mornings when I was his age, you come downstairs at 8 o'clock, turn on the telly, and there'd be no programmes on. You just sit there watching teletext with a bit of music until 9 o'clock, and then Saturday Superstore would come on.
going along.
So I found an old episode of that from when I was 9 and put it on, and he found the opening title was incredibly funny.
Good.
Just because he was like, what the hell is this? And then he managed to stick about a minute and a half of Mike Reed and John Craven talking,
I was
and then we
say,
had to turn it off. Yeah.
What effect did the charismatic children's presenter Mike Reed, I think he's a Tory and a Brexiter. I think, didn't he write a song about Brexit?
The Calypso, wasn't
Yes,
it?
yes.
Yeah.
Christ almighty.
Oh dear.
Um,
Yeah, so...
But he's from Yorkshire.
yeah.
I'm sure almost certainly is. But you know, for every Saturday Superstore, there was a number 73 or a
Yeah.
Tiswas, or there was one, and I can't remember the name of it now, but it was faintly northern, I think, and it was a comedy.
Oh, the 8:15 from Manchester.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was some great stuff back then.
Going live, obviously.
It's great when middle-aged white podcasters just talk about, oh, can you remember Bagpuss? Yeah, Bagpuss. Oh, Bagpuss. Ivor the Engine. Trumpton. Can
Possibly
you name all
that
the...
says a lot
can you
about
name all
the
three
quality of this story that we've devolved into talking about.
Chickley, Green and Trumpton.
Anyway.
Barney McGrew, Cuthbert Dibble, Grump. Anyway, sorry, you were saying about the Ice
Shall we
Warriors.
score this, mother?
Oh.
I'm going to come to Matt first. What would you like to give the Ice Warriors out of 10?
Are we allowed halves on this podcast?
Yeah, you are, yeah.
Okay.
We're not as draconian as other podcasters.
And I'm going to give it 5 out of 10.
Okay.
Because I think it's got the concepts, it's got the ideas, but it just doesn't follow through.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Ian, what would you like to give this one?
I've got to say, Matt going as low as 5 has opened up a magical realm of new possibilities. Because I was going to go with something like a 6 or a 7 because it's,
Okay.
you know, they've built sets, they've got monsters, they've got a storyline, they've populated the episodes with actors. It's all very bog standard. But there is something I found my attention was just bouncing off of this story. You know, I really wanted to watch it. I've been looking forward to seeing it again. But there was just something at its heart that just made me want to put pins in my legs. So I think I will also go with a 5.
Okay. It did drag a bit. As we've all said, the initial concept is quite interesting. Troughton, I think no matter what you give him, I think he just seems to shine. I think he's fantastic. So although he might be a lot of people's favourite Doctor, and some of the stories aren't necessarily the best, so I am going to give it a 5 as well.
Wow. I feel like we've just...
Very middling.
I feel
guilty now.
I feel like we've identified the turkey of the season, but I may be wrong. There may be worse to come.
Well, time will tell. Okay, so we've had our say. Let's hear what you guys have to say about the Ice Warriors.
I've got mail.
So I am going to start out with something from Twitter. Our good mate Gruntley the Ogron. I asked the question, is the Ice Warriors a stone cold classic? And Gruntley says, computer says no. So thank you for that, Gruntley. Next up, we have heard from Dave Jarvu. And they say, I think it's significant that even as a 4-part tale, it's still too slow and one doesn't feel they've missed anything in the 2 missing episodes. Great design, concept and guest cast, but it surely elevates Seeds of Death as a TV version of a sequel that's better than the first. Thank you for that. Next up, we've heard from Socrates.
Ooh.
Yeah, I don't think it's that Socrates. Great initial idea, and I love the Target book and its wonderful cover. But when I saw the actual story, apart from a few good moments and the very wonderful Troughton, I found it a bit of a dull mess. There is a decent story in there somewhere, but it's spread so thinly. Yes, I think you could be onto something there, Socrates. Thank you for that. Next up, we've heard from Richard Smith from Something Who. And Richard says, I bought the VHS when it came out and the animated DVD. I wanted to love it each time, but I didn't. Essentially, they could solve the story with the same ending much earlier, which leaves the final parts as a lot of indecision, running around and moaning about computers.
So it's a bit like Hamlet, but with computers.
Yeah, they should have ditched those last couple of episodes of Hamlet. Just wasn't the same.
Putting Bernard Bresslaw in it was a mistake.
Moving over to Mastodon, we are now on Mastodon, so if you want to come and find us there, we are at AOTAS@mastodon.social. And on Mastodon, we've heard from the Hand of Fear. And a fear in answer to my question, is the Ice Warriors a Stone Cold classic, has said, no, it's very dull. Harsh but fair. And next up, we've heard from the first of our Anthony Carrolls. We've got 2 Anthony Carrolls, which confuses me no end. So this Anthony says, is this perhaps the weakest first story for any recurring monster? It also just plays the hits out of what everyone thinks of this era to the point where a bold new race is lost in the tropes of the storytelling. Yeah, Ian's nodding.
I'm
Works really
here
well
for that
on audio.
comment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
True.
And we have also heard from the wonderful Jeff Goddard, who we had on for the Celestial Toymaker, for Mr. Hales. And Jeff says, am I right in thinking this is the season where Doctor Who was being governed somewhat by its new American broadcasters in that they required a rather formulaic show? This is probably the most egregious example of that formula wearing thin. A shame because the Ice Warriors themselves are magnificent. I still love it though. Doctor Who, innit?
Can't argue with that.
Any thoughts there, Ian?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that background about season 5 specifically being financed with American co-production money or whatever, but it would make sense if that were the case.
I guess they're trying to appeal to an audience, aren't they?
Yeah, I just assumed it was they accidentally stumbled on a cost-saving formula and then
Yeah, I think they definitely could be something in that as well. Okay, next up from me, we have heard from the Metabilis 2 podcast. And they say, shoddy science, even by Who standards, dull, plodding and overly long. My least liked Troughton era story. The script does Victoria few favours, especially in the ice caves and scenes with Varga. Having the Ice Warriors come from Mars seems like a waste of the Red Planet. The story's highlight for me is at the end of episode 1, where Jamie fancies Victoria wearing the base women's mini-skirted uniforms, followed by her indignation and artful ripostes. A nice flirty character moment. And that's from David. Thank you, David. Nice to have something vaguely positive at the end there. And lastly from me, we have heard from James HB. And James says, in the days before the internet and social media, DWM and DWB often tried to convince me this was a masterpiece. Then I got a bootleg of it. Apart from the science being horrendously wrong, which ends up making the Doctor look a fool as well, it's very slow and lumbering. Yes, the monsters are damn good, but the story itself sadly isn't.
I'm so glad not to be an outlier on this one.
Yes, I think we're finding some similarities in these comments. Ian, who have you heard from?
Well, I've heard from pretty much the rest of Twitter, judging by the number of comments you've sent me to read out. So, Matt, if you need to go and make another cup of tea or have a wee or anything, I'm just going to read all these out. It's going to take a while. We've heard from Etapalak, and I'm not joking or misreading that. That's his name, Etapalak. Who says, not a classic, although its message is becoming ever more resonant as time goes on. You only have to look at the recent Bing furore to see why. I originally read that as you only have to look at Bing Crosby to see why, and that made no sense. But yeah. Yeti, which is at Yoruba on Twitter, says, I can't even remember what I think of the story because the fuck-up of the very basic science that is the basis for the plot knocks it down at least 2 stars. And like I say, the science is not so much wrong as just really poor.
Yeah, but the glacier's moving quickly.
I mean, that's well, they could be
glaciers move at a glacial pace.
Perhaps if they'd slipped on a banana skin or a loose roller skate, if you think about Frank Spencer. There's a number of ways. Mark Richards writes in and said, no, this story is very dull indeed. Might have been a passable 4-parter. The Seeds of Death is far superior. Just if I was going to be pedantic, surely are superior. Martin at Tomp_Martin says, it's okay. Would have been better as a 4-parter. but I like some of the ideas behind it. Clent is possibly the most annoying of the boss characters. Nice to see Peter Sallis, and I like the idea that it's not just another invasion story. Marcus Scarman has written in to say, so very, very dull. Troughton's Web Planet with hang on, I'm not here for that. I love the Web Planet. With imagination but no substance. Although, I'll be honest, he's actually written no substances, which I wonder if Dr. Freud is...
that might possibly have helped your experience of watching
very
it if
much
you had
so.
a few substances.
Very much so. Never quite got the appeal of Ice Warriors ever.
Oh.
Then we have a nice long missive from Lucy McCall, who says, because your question was, well, is this a great story, or
is it a Stone Cold
classic? Lucy says, yes. Once I'd got past the mental dissonance of seeing Peter Sallis not being Clegg, but being a convincingly world-weary character, the dynamic of the base is well realised, with the feeling of holding back inevitable destruction. I love the bursts of humour, from the glass of water and "you're on my hand," to the Doctor's affront at his figures being checked by the computer, and his disdain for Clent, whose only useful purpose is to provide him with a pencil. Good point. The Ice Warriors are really creepy and threatening. I can see why they were brought back. There is a lot of screaming and whimpering from Victoria, but then again, horrible things keep happening to her, and it isn't her fault the Doctor asks her to wail while he is explaining his plot. It's a shame we don't have more of Jamie, but I love that he faces the frozen waste in his kilt and light raincoat, while the Doctor has his big furry coat and Victoria her cloak. That I could read all that again with the correct emphasis, but do you know what? I'm not going to.
It's more fun that
I
way.
know. The story has interesting ideas, not only from the computer paradox, but also that humanity will need to save itself from its own actions in the future. And there's a bear. So, I mean, yeah, that's the most passionate defence of this story I've ever seen. DJ Alpha T writes in to say, like so many other Troughton stories, the Ice Warrior suffers from too many episodes syndrome. It could have been a great full-parter, but at 6, it's padded and dull, which is I'll try that again in the style of someone who can talk. Which is I've screwed it up again. So, Matt, seriously, Matt, go for a walk. Go and walk the dog.
No, I'm watching professionals at work.
Oh, are you? Which is such a shame. I'm really sorry to DJ Alpha T because I've totally screwed up your tweet now. Which is such a shame because the story has so much potential. The design work is great. Space Age 60s modcon excellence. Mod excellence, not modcon excellence. That's meaningless. I'll tell you what. Next time you're on one of my other podcasts, DJ, I'll make it up to you. Simon Moore is the next person whose tweets I'm going to wreck with poor delivery and bad reading. I'll go for inept, I think, on this one. He says, a beautifully well-made piece of ordinary, I'm afraid. I've seen it several times and I still can't remember exactly what happens. Perhaps if 2 and 3 existed rather than 4 and 5, it would sit better, as I think more plot happens earlier on. But full marks to a stellar cast, excellent direction, and good production values.
Well done.
I am out. Mic drop.
Before we head over to Matt, we've got some audio from our mate Andy Moore.
Over here, Dad. Hey, oh, there you are. I thought you said we was going to meet by the Botticelli this time. I did not say we was going to meet by the Botticelli. You thought it was a Botticelli because you got Botticelli on a bloody brain. Botticelli this, Botticelli that. You never bloody stop. Well, I like a bit of Botti, don't I? I mean, each to their own. Listen, I even don't mind me saying you look a little bit anxious. Worried more than anxious, Dad. Worried. Very, very worried. What you got to be anxious about then? It's the eyes, Dad. I'm very, very worried about the eyes. I know what you mean. I'm worried about it as well. Listen, we should have listened to Greta about climate change, shouldn't we? Bloody Garbo. Bloody woman never leaves me alone. Oh, Pieta, make sweet, sweet love to me. Oh, the hater. The whole world is doomed and we're going to die encased in ice. Put a sock in it, love. I thought you was worried about the ice, though. I thought it's what you were just saying. Weren't you just saying you was worried about the ice? No, I said I was worried about the eyes, Dud. The eyes following me round, watching every move I make. Beady eyes staring out from portraits. Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. I'll tell you something else, Van Havit. They're watching you now as well. Oh, blimey, yeah. Now you've got me worried about the eyes as well. We're just a pair of eyes warriors. Yeah, so let's go to the pub.
Well, there you go. Another classic from Andy. Thanks, Andy. Oh, wow.
That was great. That was like Alan Partridge laughing.
It really was, wasn't it? Yeah.
At a Volvo sponsorship reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got nothing. That was a very funny contribution. Thank you, Andy.
Yes, he's very annoying because he's way funnier than any of us, which is, harsh but fair. Matt,
is it my turn to read these tweets? Because I
yes, please.
Rattle through them because I don't really care what other people think. Okay, so the other Anthony Carroll, who I'm not convinced is a different Anthony Carroll. I think he's just like, he says, like it, but it's slow, 7 out of 10. Ealing scenes are great, and another carry-on star as a villain. It's fine.
Yeah.
I wonder, is there a point where it turns from carry-on stars in Doctor Who to Bond guest stars in Doctor Who?
Oh.
That's something to think about.
Yeah.
It might not be a classic, but I rather love it. Angus Lenny, yay. Peter Sallis and Peter Barkworth. What a cast. They really make up for any plot deficiencies. The Ice Warriors are quite fun creations too. Victoria isn't exactly my fave companion, but you can't have everything. Adrian Berry says, it does drag a bit, but there are some good scenes. Is Jamie dead? Victoria hiding from the Ice Warrior. When it's searching, it suddenly turns her way. Varga looks different after he defrosts. So that's Adrian Berry's comments.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Adrian.
26 glorious years. This is a comment from them. A story that, if you'll excuse the pun, I warm to with each successive viewing. Martinus's fluid camera work is a joy. Troughton is spot on, and Breslau's Varga is everything I visualised from the moment I saw Achillios's striking target cover. Positive ions throughout for me. I'm very sorry for bursting your bubble. Steve Cunliffe. This story wins on atmosphere. The ice cave stuff is amazingly good, and Derek Martinus's direction is impressive. It does descend into lots of running about though. The science is shocking, and screaming Victoria useless and unbearable. Oh, it's the Australians. It's the Doctor Who show.
G'day, Rob.
Am I going to do it? Am I going to do the accent?
I think you should.
Go on.
A royal snooze fest. No, I can't do it.
Are you trying to do a Yorkshire accent now?
No.
What was that?
A real snooze fest. Godspeed to whoever you've roped in for that episode.
I thought you'd appreciate reading that one out, Matt.
Just a padded out, screamy bore of a thing. Amazing that the Ice Warriors are beloved by so many fans when one of their core stories is this. But that points to their concept being a good one, I think. That was Rob and or David making
that was Rob.
That was Rob, was it?
Yeah, thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob. And speaking of Australians, Dave Kay of the Australian parish. The Ice Warriors themselves look amazing. Iconic design. But the story is dull. 5.5 eps of we can't use the ionizer as a weapon in case it blazes up, and sod it. Let's use the ionizer. Dull characters. Says everything. You don't even notice episodes 2 and 3 are missing. They got thrown on the Barbie.
You went a bit Wolverhampton there at the end.
I thought it was really good.
I was flawlessly Australian.
Thank you so much for all of your feedback, and if you want to get in touch, we'll be listing all the different ways over our end credits. So before we say goodbye to you, Matt, let's have some recommendations.
Okay. So I think the TV series I suddenly got into is The Gold, which is about the Brinks-Mat robbery.
Oh yeah, a friend at work was telling me about this.
Peter Davison's in it. That's the Doctor Who hook.
Okay, yeah.
It's actually really good. I preferred it to Happy Valley. It's really well. It's like life. It's got sort of Life on Mars-y kind of vibes, set in the or Ashes to Ashes, 80s police force. Humour. There's quite a lot of jokes in it. There's quite a lot of humour in it. It's actually better than its concept sounds. That's television. A book that I don't know if I've recommended before on this podcast is called The Apparition Phase by Will McKean.
Okay.
So it's a book. It's a horror ghost story. Normally ghost stories, if they write a novel that's a ghost story, I think they flag halfway or they lose the plot a bit. This sustains. This actually scared me. This is a novel that actually scared me. It's tailor-made for Doctor Who fans. It actually features somebody watching Doctor Who, I think 10th Planet or something, in the story. It's a period piece. It's got people watching the Stone tape, so it's set around that time.
Oh, wow, okay.
It's really good. Lots of sort of cultural references, but a genuinely scary book.
Sounds like it could have been written for you, Matt.
It was pretty much written for every Doctor Who fan, I would say.
Great. Okay, well, thanks for those.
You're welcome.
I'm going to make a recommendation. I'm going to recommend a YouTube channel. So I'm a bit of a sucker for those reaction channels where people react to stuff that they haven't seen before. There are hundreds and hundreds of Doctor Who ones, and one that I've found that I really enjoy watching is called Nicole Logic Reacts. It's a lady called Nicole who's from Germany, and she's been watching the new series from Series 1. And she'd never seen Doctor Who before, so she's seeing all of this completely fresh. And there's something quite nice just being able to sit with the foreknowledge of what's coming next and watch someone watch it through and see their reaction as, various things come up. And it's just a really fun way to spend half an hour. So I'd definitely recommend that one.
Are they sort of like a reaction to watching one whole episode, or do they cut it down?
So it gets edited. It gets edited down. I think probably for rights reasons more than anything else, because the BBC can be quite funny about people showing too much of their programs on YouTube. So, but it's just a really nice way to spend half an hour, 45 minutes just watching their reaction.
That does sound quite fun. I have got a pop record to mention this week, because I've been going to the gym a lot, and sometimes you just can't jog to REM or Tori Amos or any of the other miserable slow ass stuff I listen to. So I got this album called Remember by a band called Weevil, who are two Dutch guys, and it's kind of electronica in a sort of a slightly more upbeat kind of Kid A / Amnesiac kind of sound. So it's pretty kind of there's a definite journey to it, but you don't, it's electronica, so it's just it just propels you along, and it's a really good listen, but it's kind of, I guess, background music rather than something you'd sit there and listen to.
Good workout music.
Yeah.
I mean, the demographic of this podcast thanks you.
Somebody listening might have a friend or indeed a partner who has been to a gym.
That's true.
Yeah.
The Venn diagram of people who watch the Ice Warriors and people who go to the gym, there is an intersection there.
There probably is.
There probably is.
Yeah. Matthew, thank you for gracing us with your presence once more.
I'm very sorry.
And so are we. Would you like to give a plug to what you've got going on before you disappear off into the ether?
Oh man, have I got an episode coming up on the book one that you do, Ian, or is that already gone? So there's the book one that Ian does. I'm mostly on the Strangers in Space podcast, which we've sort of slowly started padding it out with new people.
You've got about 300 presenters now.
Yeah. We're trying out some amateurs, giving them an opportunity to get to a wider audience.
Yeah. But enough about JR. What about the new guys that are coming on?
They're all right. They're coming up. They're improving podcast by podcast.
That's good.
Some of them just fall flat each week.
That new lad, Jim Cameron, he's good, isn't he?
He's brilliant.
I think he'll really go places. Yeah.
Dylan Reese is fantastic.
Yeah,
Mark
like
Donaldson knows so much about film. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
So these are all the ones that are really kind of taking flight. They're really embracing the idea and taking flight.
I like that Simon Brett as well. He's good.
Simon Brett hasn't been on it recently, but he's certainly his presence is still felt. I mean, in some ways, even when Simon's not on a podcast, you feel his presence. Sometimes more than other podcasters on the Strangers in Space podcast. Sometimes other people just fall so flat on that podcast that even Lee Rawlings, who hasn't been on it for a year, you can feel his presence.
Matt, who exactly are these flat falling failures of whom you speak?
I don't like to out them.
You couldn't put a name.
No.
Interesting.
I mentioned no Martins and names.
Oh, that's awkward.
So yeah, Strangers in Space.
Yeah.
I'm on, and I don't think I've been on many others recently. This one, I'm on this podcast.
You are. You're probably on it.
So if you're listening to this podcast and you've enjoyed it, and you've enjoyed listening to Matt,
to it.
Rewind it, go back to the start,
go back and listen to some of the others. Yeah.
Or some of the other episodes that he's been on. I mean, you were here. You joined us to talk about Edge of Destruction and
and Unearthly Child.
Yeah. Oh, and that one. And
the Savages.
As some of the comments
testify. Did you do the Space Museum?
Space Museum, I did.
I'm just trying to pick them all out so that anyone who's developed a weird, sort of tolerance for you as a human being can easily go back and pick out those episodes that you've also graced with your.
The other thing that occurs to me that if you want a podcast or if you want a website, or any kind of digital marketing, I run a digital marketing agency called Toco Digital.
That's the sort of thing that you could be mentioning, yeah.
That's TOCO Digital, all one word.
Yeah.
.co.uk. Come to us for fair rates for all your digital marketing
Come
needs.
to us for a speech impediment and a bungled attempt at self-promotion.
I put all my websites together with the care and attention that I had to take.
And you slipped that in so effortlessly.
If you're from Yorkshire, come along. I'll do you a good deal.
I will give you Matthew's home address. And on that bombshell.
You don't know my home address.
Oh, I can find it. I'll slip a message to JR. He'll be happy to send the Yorkshire Mafia around to you.
Well, he's a postman. Presumably they have a network of people who know where everyone lives.
Yeah,
so, It's like in Jeeves and
And on that bombshell.
Yes. Sorry.
Thank you again for listening. And we'll be back again soon. If you'd like to get in touch, you can email us at mailbagofrassilon@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter @TimeEndSpacePod, and you can also find us on Facebook. If you want to leave some audio feedback, there is a link in the show notes. You can use your phone or your computer and leave up to 60 seconds of feedback, or if you're listening via the Anchor website, you can click on the message button and leave your audio. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you to Momo Tempo for providing our theme music.